Good evening, everyone, and it is time for the weekly wrap up for the week's reading. And it's the end of the week, and I'm just going to use the word week as many times as I can. And we have pictures that are not weak. We have good things to show you this week. So let's finish the week. First of all, I hope you are having a good time and are feeling better, and definitely not having random birthday parties that get put in the newspaper because that's just over the top is what it is. That's just a little too much, and that's how it goes. Hey, it's Sunday. Be sure to do your replies on Blackboard. A quick check of Blackboard in the last hour or so. There's still people that have not done that, or they haven't finished all their replies. In both classes, we're down probably about 10 from what we should have, so please be sure to do that before the end of the evening. Grades will be posted on Monday. I was a little late with the initial posts. Those are in now. And the replies I will do tomorrow morning and get that taken care of. If I can, very quickly before moving on to the next slide, grades are due for me by Tuesday. Apparently Tuesday at like noon. That is going to be the official end for the third quarter. So please note, I don't think any of you owe me anything. At this point, everything that needs to be done, I think, is done. And furthermore, we don't have anything due quickly that I need to be graded in time for that. So I think we're all good, but just so you know, and this is for any class you have, the third quarter officially ends grade-wise Tuesday. So please be aware of that with any work that you have. So on the slide here, it says grades will be posted Monday. That is for the replies for Blackboard for this evening. Like all weeks, we have a bunch of classroom management stuff. I just want you to soak in this slide for a second, if you can, because I just think Peter looks magnificent in this picture, so why not? The reading schedule, this is going to be the end of the reading schedule for Invisible Man. I'll mention this again in a little bit, but this is going to be one of the last wrap-ups for both classes after next Sunday-ish. And I know that's Easter, but after that, we will be doing wrap-ups from now on that will be different for each class, and we'll talk about that later, meaning like weeks from now. Reading schedule is posted there. And that's the end of the book. Same structure for the discussion board posts that we've been using. Same deal. Apply or reply and choose anything you'd like, and then you may immediately start working on the questions. First come, first serve. Let me move my head out of the way so you can actually see all the things there. And then I'll update the master list on Blackboard as usual. Move my head again so you can see things. It's just ridiculous. I'm in the way. And discussion must be posted by Thursday. So very quickly, I know you understand that it says Sunday. It should say Sunday 4/12. And this is the week 4 work here now. But I know that Sunday is Easter, and you'll see something from me this week in a day or two regarding how we're going to handle that. So just we'll move on from there and talk about that soon enough. Try to adhere to it as best you can, but you're going to have extra time to work on things. Writing stuff that we have. So there's a bunch of different writing things for both juniors and seniors. So first, let's get into the juniors. That's a baby sloth, by the way, in case you're wondering what sort of odd little creature that is right there. I actually don't think that's cute at all, but why not? We're kind of running out of animals. Most baby animals are actually kind of gross, so we're kind of running out of them. So for 1510 students for the juniors, paper 3.3 is going to be due on Thursday. 4 pages min, 5 pages max. All MLA formatting should be applied. Your peer review work has to be submitted to me, so screenshot it. Take a picture of it with your phone, whatever you want to do, but you have to get it to me. I do want to see them. So you might remember after the peer review when we did it, and we'll talk about peer review in just a second for the seniors, I didn't need you to send me that material. You have to have it. So you need proof of that work. And then I can take a look at the rest of the stuff. It's kind of like the Turnitin stuff from before. If you don't submit Turnitin, if you don't submit the peer review stuff, I can't accept it and I won't accept it. So you need to make sure that you're giving me all of that stuff. This is the final JCC essay. This is it. As you see on the bottom there, if for some reason you can attach it, whatever, you've got to let me know. You can email things to me, but I would prefer you to submit the actual file to the classroom and to Google Classroom in some way. I prefer you not to email me. And now it's time for 1510 to take a nap. And now we're going to do 1540 fun stuff. 6.1, this is going to be the peer review. The juniors did this. It worked out really well. Of course, I say that. I have not collected their papers yet, so we'll see. I could be completely wrong. That never happened, so I'm confident about this. 6.1 was due already. So what I want you to do is post your essay. It should say the 6.1 location. I have to change these slides. Shame on me. To the 6.1 location in the Invention Lab. You'll see that at the bottom of the Blackboard screen. There we go. You will read each other's essays. So you have a partner. You will read each other's essays, do the following. So first you post the essay, and then you're going to use the plus minus TWO. We've used that before. I think our last peer review done in class at school was really well done. I think that students did a nice job with that. The pairs worked out well. You are not just doing the plus minus TWO. This is a chance for you to correct grammar, spelling, punctuation. You can do it digitally. You can do it through Notability. You can do it any way you want to. But that is something you're going to have to do. I'll slide the picture down below. You're going to post your material to the Invention Lab. I just said that. And then fourth, make sure that you have a post that you received it. So if you were not napping when I was talking to the juniors, and this should say 1540 students. This is shameful. I really goofed up. I must have saved the wrong slide here. So for the 1540 students, when we're doing this, you need to have some sort of a post. Email each other something so that there's proof that you got it. So if Braden sends his essay to his partner, I want the partner to post or reply or something that you got it. Because if you have your stuff and you don't get a reply, assume that your partner didn't get it, or they have fallen off a cliff, or they are actively hunting the Easter Bunny with a 22, whatever it is you're doing. So make sure that you are in contact with each other. If there's a problem, please contact me, and then I'll try to make sure that everybody is taken care of. This is time for our weekly substitute for the Wall of Fun. As you know, we continue to attempt to get anybody that is anybody to say hello to you all. I have tried a few different things. I continue to try. There's no guarantee it's going to work, but it doesn't mean we aren't going to keep trying. And to that end, here's our weekly failure. So the first thing I tweeted, you might remember I tweeted before to other people. I continue to send things out. I'm going to go to people's actual emails and their own home pages and stuff, because it is nice to get the negative, physical reply from someone like we got from Stephen King. But here we go, some general people. This is like the Marvel week. We tried a few of the people that do Marvel stuff, and it didn't really work at all again. And I don't know, it's a little frustrating and not frustrating. I don't know, like we should send gifts or something. I don't know. If you have suggestions for people that I should attack, go after, that's fine. Attack and go after is probably the wrong vocabulary. We're going to try athletes next time and see if we get any luck with that. But I'm not sure. We'll see what we can come up with. After this is a slightly new category. This is something, again, remember I mentioned that we're going to be done, and that means our wrap-ups will change too. But first of all, we'll talk about the wrap-up, which we'll be talking about in a week or so. And so our next book is here, Juniors. We're doing The Things They Carried, and the seniors did that already when they were sophomores with me. I'm going to refuse to swear to you or at you in one of the weekly wrap-ups, but the things they carried is chock filled with all sorts of profanity and terrible things. And the seniors, you were asked to have that large book with you. We've ignored that large book because we haven't needed it, but we are now done. After Invisible Man is over, we are done with reading novels, with reading any of that stuff, and we have short stories, and then we have poems, and I will be sending you information shortly about how we'll be doing presentations. Remember, you need to have another presentation, according to JCC. There are many ways to do it. We can see if we can come up with some live stuff, whether we do a Zoom thing or not. Some of you might not be comfortable with that, so we don't have to use Zoom. It could be something you record yourself uh, and then upload it. That's fine. But we will talk more about that as we get closer to it. We still have a couple weeks before that's going to happen. And as you see on the bottom there, the reading schedules will come within a week or so. Juniors, just to refresh your memory, the next two books you were given, the things they carried, and then and it went right out of my head because I know The Road is our last book, and that is not in your possession. I have to get that to you. Um, Into the Wild, thank you, is the book after the things they carried. So we have to get that book to you, which we will do. I'll probably be able to deliver that since I come in on Fridays and do food runs for the district. So I might do that during and after my food runs, or figure it out otherwise. And so now we get into Invisible Man and all of the fun things in this chapter. I know I'm going to just start by saying chapter 19 is, if it's not my favorite chapter of the book, it's like number 2, maybe number 3. I like the Battle Royal chapter, which is chapter 1. I like the Rebirth or Renaissance chapter that we've already talked about, which I think is 15 or 16. 16. So those I like, but chapter 19 is all sorts of depraved and weird, and I like that a lot. I think I can, if I slide my head down here, I think it's out of the way. All right, so chapter 16. I didn't give you this question. I would have given this to you as a quiz if we had the class together. I would have asked you this. You know how these quizzes work. We've seen a lot of growth from the narrator. We've seen growth in 2 different dimensions, if you want to view it that way. So from chapter 1, or the prologue, we've seen him change between chapter 1 certainly and now. And then we've also seen growth from the chapter when he's reborn in the factory hospital to now. His first speech, for instance, is terrible. It's awful when the people are getting evicted, when they're dispossessed. It's awful. But this new speech in chapter 16 is far more effective, and we see a lot of good out of it, and he's able to carry an audience. So a question I might have asked you, and I'm not going to cover right now, but how has the narrator grown? There's several ways that you can consider the narrator's grown. Whether it is going to be in his effectiveness for speaking or whatever, there's a lot more to it. So that is a question that I would ask you if we were in class. So moving on, because chapter 16 was the speech, and there's a lot to it. I think most students, I think it's because it's always the first chapter of the week, both classes really went after chapter 16, so there's a lot of discussion on that. Chapter 17, nobody chose question 3 from chapter 17 this week. And so this is an important question for everybody in the class, because remember that we'll come up with something to do instead of discussion over what the week would be coming up for spring break. And we'll talk about that in a day or two. But the Communist parties here, and the question itself was actually, there's a lot of writing to that question. So our author, Ralph Ellison, was involved with the Communist Party, not like he was a communist, but he knew people who were, and he traveled in the same sort of circles. And there is truth to the fact that the Communist Party went out of the way to recruit African Americans, and then as the Communist Party changed, I'm sure you know this from your time, whether it's with Mr. Armstrong now or Mr. Armstrong in the past, There absolutely was a time after World War I where communism was not cool to be affiliated with. And around that time, the Communist Party abandoned African Americans for the most part, just kind of took them and cast them aside. And you see some of the way that the narrator feels about that and the author feels about that. And then part of that is also how the black nationalists responded. And you see some of that with Ross, who's, again, standing over Todd Clifton with a knife, kind of like our narrator did in the prologue when a tall, white, blonde man with blue eyes bumps him and calls him a terrible word, which we're pretty sure we know what that word is, calls him a terrible word, and he nearly stabs him to death. He nearly slits his throat. And then he reconsiders. And the same sort of image is there when Ross is about to kill Todd Clifton, and he's yelling. He stops and he's yelling at the narrator. He's like, "You're black. Don't you realize they hate you? They can't stand you. They think you smell." All these really specific pieces of imagery there, and so that's how they responded mattered. So as I move my head out of the way again. So how does this connect today? This is another thing that would be a quiz question, and I'm not asking for an answer, obviously. You don't have to email me, but it's something to discuss. So what would it be today? We've got Booker T. Washington or W.E.B. Du Bois. And if you remember our chart, down off of Booker T. Washington, you had Martin Luther King Jr., and then on the other side you had, W.E.B. Du Bois, and then that line went pretty far off to the right, and that's how you got Malcolm X. So who would stand in for Ross today if it was still going to be African Americans? Remember, Ross is some sort of Caribbean, so he might be Jamaican, he's something like that, but he's still African American. Who would stand in today? Who would be the person that they think about? Now, what if all of these characters were Hispanic? Who would be the stand-in in that case? And then what if this were written just specifically from the perspective of women? If it were just whether it's feminism or just about women's rights, who would be the people that would stand in for this today? Who would be or what groups would stand in? Those sort of things. There's a lot of possible answers here depending on how militant you want to be. There are definitely militant the whites, militant African Americans, militant Hispanics or Latinos. And then, of course, there are militant women too. All of these issues, don't forget, it's in your very recent past where the Me Too movement came up and exploded. And so there's a lot more power there than there had been in years past. How would that have fit? How would that have possibly been something that would have fit for in chapter 17 here? I know that scene with the narrator standing over, or the narrator watching as Ross stands over Todd Clifton with a knife. So 18 is a quick chapter, and it's not so much that it's short. It's that I think when you talk about the images that you see in this book, they're very simple, I think, in chapter 18. So you have the chain link. Peter Torres answered the question that he thought the chain link dealt with slavery, and Carson said that it was a connection to the brotherhood, like they're all connected, they're all part of a same group. I think both work, and I think both would be acceptable answers for that. I don't know that one's better than the other. It's a slave link, so it's easy to make that connection. But I think that the brotherhood works because who's holding it? It's Brother Tarp with the chain link. And then again, you get into chapter 18. He's so good as a speaker that the narrator doesn't understand. He's like, I'm doing what you want me to do. Everyone's listening. They're enjoying it. They like it. And then he's booted. He's essentially kicked out. And so this is where we come back to the slide a couple ago that we talk about the author and the Communist Party, his time in the Communist Party, and how blacks were cast aside. Well, so if they're truly communist, everybody should be equal. That's one of the benefits of communism, is that everyone's equal. Everyone has the same stuff. But I know the seniors, when they were with me as sophomores, we read Animal Farm. I thought that the juniors read Animal Farm too. I know that next year's juniors, so current sophomores, will have read Animal Farm. I thought the juniors did too. I didn't hear back from Mrs. Muscarella. So nonetheless, everyone is equal, but some are more equal than others. And I think you can see in chapter 18 that the narrator is not somebody that is more equal. He's not like, the pigs like Napoleon and all that stuff. He's not in the rulers and the leaders. So that's why he just can't be too big. He can't be too powerful, too popular. And so he's got to go. And now we get to what is, I think, I've already told you, is one of my favorite chapters of the book by far. This is something that I've talked to you guys about before. We are unquestionably into the portion of the year where the things we read are more adult. These are things you read in college. You wonder about the difference between college stuff and high school and middle school stuff. And now we're at that difference. And so specifically chapter 19, this relationship, whatever it is, between the narrator and this white woman, the Sybil, is an example for that. So the first question dealt with really the stereotype of black men and what they might represent, or why people might be interested in them. And I'll ignore. I'm not going to reread all the things that were put in Summer's post. I think Summer's post was good. At least Lila responded to it and agreed with it too. But then Ashland said the same thing. So there's these ideas here of stereotypes and taboo. It's like something you can't have, but you still want. It could be as simple as like candy or ice cream. It could be somebody that your parents told you can't date, or shouldn't date, or someplace you're not supposed to go, or something you're not supposed to do, and yet you still want it. So that's a lot of that with question 1. It could be deeper. I think it would be something I'd cover a little bit more and a little bit differently if we were face to face, but it is something that's definitely still there. The second question there, and you notice that I think question 2, 3, and 4 all deal with this scene when Sybil's husband comes home. So the question I had is it possible that the husband didn't see the narrator? If he saw him, what does that mean? So it's like they have that type of marriage. It was open marriage or whatever you want to call it. She says her husband is out trying to be young again. So her husband might be doing terrible things someplace else, right? So maybe he saw him and was just like, oh, well, I'm doing what I want to do, so you do what you want to do. But if he didn't see him, like, it's possible, like, I don't know if you've ever, like, hid under a bed or hid under sheets or something like that. It's possible he doesn't see him, because he could, for instance, maybe the dude's coat is, like, hanging on a chair in the dining room, or maybe there's some other reason why he knows something happened, but he doesn't see the narrator. But if he didn't see him, what does that say? So it's one of those things like, because remember, Sybil was drinking the night before. Maybe this guy comes home and he's drunk, or maybe he's been drinking or doing who knows what. So again, it goes back to the idea of invisibility there. So the stereotypes question. This should also have said something. Question 5 wasn't stereotypes. It was going to be about. I'm not going to cut the video, but it was about the words chosen for these things. That Sybil is attractive, and it shows what she wants and how she wants things. And the narrator's explanation shows a charged vocabulary too. It's one of my favorite lines from the book. He says, "Why must we confuse the class struggle with the ass struggle?" Which is an awesome line because it rhymes and so much more. The deal is, like, if we're trying to be better, trying to be stronger and more powerful and everything else, why do people still concern that or connect that with sex? Why can't they just solve one problem at a time? Of course, it's not that easy. That's not how that goes. That often the two are intertwined, which is exactly what happens in chapter 19. That's one of the whole points, so that we know our narrator's trying to be better and get stronger and so on and so forth, and things keep getting in his way. In this chapter, it's sex, it is women, whatever you'd like to call it, or however you want to phrase it. That's something else that gets in his way. And finally, 6, we had 2 different students, Kylie Odell and Morgan McLaughlin, chose for 6 for racism. If you do get a black man or black woman, I guess, if it were some other book or some other situation, get an African American to do the bidding of a white person, there's definitely an element of racism. And so, but I don't know, like, I know I gave you the question. I still feel like the narrator knew what he was doing. In fact, just before the husband comes home, he says something like, um, that the room is vibrating, it's pulsing. It's like he's losing his consciousness. He's seeing things, and the room is kind of fuzzy. And finally, he decides at the very end. It's like two lines at the end of that little section before the husband comes home, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to do it, and they can knock down the door and come after me, and I don't care. So I do think he made the decision. He could have walked out the door, and just left, but he didn't. So he stayed and did it. Um, and so I think that she did what she wanted and got what she wanted. But I think the narrator definitely was a willing participant and made that decision. He made that choice. So as we end for the evening, as we end for this, um, so the narrator now has to go back to Harlem. After a little bit of time, Todd Clifton is missing, and he has to go back to Harlem. And so, what does that mean? Don't forget, and I gave this to you in last week's wrap up, and it's not covered in the book. Todd Clifton. Everybody's name matters. Todd. It's spelled Tod. Um, what does that mean in German? And so, where's that going? And that's where we leave chapter 19. Well, for some reason, I tried to make my head bigger on the screen here, but I couldn't. So this is the end of our wrap up for the week. A bunch of things coming to you tomorrow and coming to you the next 2 days, I should say. Number one, the work for the week. If you heard me last time, I know I said this to a couple of people. I'm not going to be giving you discussion board questions this week. We're handling this week differently, and then getting ready to lead into our next book. That's for both juniors and seniors, although the seniors will be doing short stories. And there are still pieces of writing to do. A very quick finale here as we get close to 27, 28 minutes. I have no answer for you about the regions. Speaking of German now, to juniors now, I have no answer about the regions. As soon as I know, I will tell you. I have no answer about the year-end schedule, so I will give you all the information I have. Next Sunday, it is Easter. I hope you enjoy Easter. I hope you get the chance. I know you're spending time with family because you have no other choice, really. Um, we are going to have Zoom meetings this week. I'll send you the information for that too. So this is just our weekly wrap up. I hope you have a great week. I hope you had a great week. No one is ill and that everyone is feeling okay. And we will talk to you very soon. Take care.